Hi, my name is Elle Billing. I am a chronically ill queer femme, and I'm tired. I'm here this episode and every episode to dig at the roots of our collective fatigue, explore ways to direct our care in compassionate and sustainable ways, and to harness creative expression to heal ourselves and to heal our world. Welcome to Hoorf, Radical Care in a Late Capitalist Hexscape. Okay, so I literally just said my opening chats with guests are usually off topic. And so I'm just opening by saying that because I don't know how to open this conversation with you because we talk all the time.
Yeah.
Hi, Ricki.
Hi.
It's snowing outside today.
It snowed a little bit here, but it's mostly just cold.
See, we had that really bad cold snap, and it's snowing because it warmed up. Because
Oh,
the air
yeah.
can hold moisture again.
Yep.
It was like 30 below for
Yeah.
several days, and now it's 20 above.
Hooray.
And it's snowing, and Winky's like, snow, snow, snow. I want to eat the snow. Right now, she's like, Mother, why are you recording? You're supposed to be eating. This is the time
Snow.
when you eat breakfast, not when you sit on your computer in the office. Tried to give her a choo choo, and she RUNNOFT with it.
Yeah.
And went and tried to bury it in her blanket instead of
Yeah.
sitting and chewing on it. Because this isn't where we chew bones. We chew bones in the other room.
Yeah.
So anyway, I am drinking my coffee out of a Hoorf mug.
A Hoorf
Did
mug.
you know we have Hoorf branded mugs?
I knew that. I don't know how many listeners know that.
I am not great at marketing.
Yeah,
They're
neither am
adorable.
I.
This is one of the old Hoorf mugs. It has the old logo on it. We have a new logo. I commissioned an illustrator to draw Winky, and it's adorable.
Yeah.
It's
so
super
it's like
cute.
actually our dog instead of a clip art dog.
Yeah. Which was actually, I mean, the clip art dog kind of captured her personality. It had her eyes closed and her tongue out, which is basically what it's like
and
to try to take
the bandana.
And the bandana. Which is basically what it's like to try to take a picture of her because she's like, I'm not cooperating. But I did get a really adorable illustration of Winky, and it's on our stickers and our mug now. So, yeah, I got that. I busted that mug out this morning. I'm like, I'm gonna drink coffee out of the Hoorf mug while I'm recording this episode with Ricki. So, how have you received care recently?
This past weekend, there's a friend of mine that I met in grad school who happens to live a couple blocks from us.
Mm-hmm.
And they came over on Sunday and brought a board game that was our Christmas present called Wormspan is what it's called. It's if you've seen the board game Wingspan, that tends to be in like Target and stuff like that. It's that game, but with like a dragon skin over top of it. It's like basically the same mechanics, but dragons instead of birds.
So not worms.
Well, worm with a Y.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So they came over and we played that, and they brought Makins for French onion soup.
Oh,
and
soup.
Yes, and some French bread with various cheeses upon it that we toasted up, and it was very good. It was a very nice weekend. And it was nice to see other people because it's been really cold and COVID's been gross out in the land.
I mean, really, there's like 4 going around. It's like they're calling it a quademic.
Yeah,
I had the Christmas crud. It lasted 10
Yeah.
days. It was like time traveling. I was so sick.
Yeah, there's like 2 different flus plus COVID plus norovirus is going around. And now we have
RSV.
bird flu to maybe worry about. So that's rad. I don't get out of the apartment much unless it's for errands and stuff like that. So I just don't spend time with other people very much.
Mhm.
And so that was nice. It was nice to have a meal and to play games and to see a friend and do all that stuff to forget that it's winter.
And soup is, like, the ultimate in, like, comfort food, and when somebody else brings you soup, that's just, like
And like the thing is like they brought the ingredients and we made it here. So like the apartment has smelled like French onion soup for like 3 days. It's amazing.
oh,
Like
yeah,
it was very pleasant. Yeah.
that's really good.
Yeah.
I dig that.
Yeah. So like that's like the external stuff. I suppose internally I have this isn't really care so much as dissociation, but I've been playing a lot of Pokemon. I don't know what it is about that game, but it just like it makes me feel relaxed in a way that other games don't. Um,
Mhm,
Not quite as much as Stardew Valley, which is like the warm blanket of video games, but there's just something about the pace of the game. It's
mhm.
not it's not urgent in any way, and trying to slow down is something that I've been trying to do since Monday especially, but recently.
Mhm.
Um So, yeah.
Yeah. I came home from work last night, and I walked in the door, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, it smells like cookies in here."
Oh, yeah.
And I my parents always send the dog out to greet me when I get home from work, so I heard these little clicky steps on the laminate floor, and her little tail's wagging. I'm like, "Hi, Winky. Hi, Winky." And I popped my head around the corner, and I said, "Did someone make cookies?" And my dad said, "No, I farted next to the heater."
Daniel.
I was like, "Oh, okay. Good job,
Uh,
dad." And so then I go into the kitchen because I usually fill my water cup and then go sit with my parents, and
mhm.
wind down a little bit after work before I go to bed. And I get into the kitchen and dad comes in there and he's like, "You can't have craisins, can you?" I said, "No, I can't." He goes, "Oh, well, I made all 3 boxes of cookie dough that were in the freezer." He really did make cookies. And one of the clubs at school, at the high school, sells cookie dough every year, and he had bought 3 boxes, and then he baked all 3 boxes last night. So, Dan's been stressed. My dad gets really domestic when he's stressed out. So he had been vacuuming when I left for work.
Yeah.
So not only did we got a new vacuum. So not only did he use the new vacuum and vacuum all the carpets, but he also baked all the cookie dough. So I
Oh.
couldn't have the oatmeal craisin, but there were triple chocolate chip cookies, and I did have
Mm.
some of those, and the house smelled like warm cookies, and the
Yeah.
cookies were still warm, and so I
Mm.
got to have cookies and
Yeah.
sit on the couch with my dog. Yeah, it was
Yeah. I actually discovered that there are chocolate chips in our cabinet. And so I think somebody had an idea of making chocolate chip cookies and just never told me that. So I'm gonna have to check and see if we have eggs or not. I think we do.
they'll be the most expensive chocolate chip cookies ever made.
Oh man.
Except for the chocolate chip cookies that you'll make, like, next month, because those will also be the most expensive chocolate chip
Yeah.
cookies ever made.
The most expensive so far.
Unless you get, like, a goose that lays golden eggs, and then
Oh,
those
those
cookies.
are those for eating though? Like, I guess I've never are th- are the eggs solid gold
You
or
know,
are they regular?
I never thought about that until just now, but, there
Yeah,
are, like, really fancy restaurants that, like, put, like,
gold leaf.
gold leaf on
Yeah,
food. So I
yeah.
imagine that in someone's headcanon, as of right now, the goose that lays the golden eggs involves some manner of gold leaf with the eggs and really fancy chocolate chip cookies
Mm,
that serve no purpose except to make really rich people in New York. I'm not picking on New York specifically for as the city, but like people on Wall Street
mm-hmm.
who spend money on things because they can.
Yeah,
It's the mentality. Um, there are lots of great people in New York who don't do that.
several million, in fact.
Yeah, yeah. But the whole like I'm gonna eat gold
Yeah,
thing, it comes from the goose that lays golden eggs. As of right now, that is someone's headcanon. And by someone, I mean me.
Yeah.
So, I was going to say, speaking of that, no, I have no segue. Speaking of segues, let's talk about failure. But seriously, what have you been working? Like, let's talk about the project. Let's talk about the project. You finished a book.
Yeah, I finished
You're publishing
a
book.
To be clear, I'm self-publishing it because I am personally not a fan of the traditional publishing loop, which requires you to do all of the same work of self-publishing a book as far as proofing and promotion and art
and marketing
and all of that stuff. Like, you have to do all of that work regardless, but in traditional publishing, somebody takes a big chunk of that.
Yeah, especially now. We're like,
yeah,
I think before there used to be some advantages of traditional publishing where the publishing house would do your marketing for you.
Yeah, they do marketing or the actual physical publishing of the book or distribution. Yeah.
Right.
And we don't have to do that anymore with the advent of the internet and various print-on-demand services. Printing has gotten very cheap and very easy, and so has bookbinding. So there are lots of services. Amazon has one, but like Ingram, the book distribution company, they have one. Lulu.com is a pretty old one. Will Wheaton wrote a book with them once. So there are lots of print-on-demand sorts of avenues that one can use. And by cutting out that publishing company, more of the money goes to me, which, as a very strange writer, it's very difficult to get someone that understands the work, because so much of publishing is catching the right person at the right time. It's very much a lottery. And poetry especially, you have so many book awards and contests and all of that stuff. You have to pay a fee to get in.
Pay to play.
I understand that a lot of these are run by small entities that are trying to fairly compensate their time and effort. But like, I also need to be fairly compensated. There's a thing that Harlan Ellison said once, that like, pay the writer. There would be nobody on the television set, on the studio set, without the writer. All of those people are dependent on the writing, and if the writing's not there, then there's no point. So I would like to be fairly compensated for my time. And the easiest way to do that is to do all of that same work myself that I'd be doing myself, and just keeping all that money for myself.
Right. Yeah. So, all that to say,
yes,
you spent 3 years working on a book.
Yeah. The initial genesis of it started when you were still in Twin Falls. And like so many things that happen in art, basically it was two ideas that smashed into my head at the same time, which was the Walter Benjamin essay Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction and Love in the Time of Cholera. And like smashing those two ideas together to become Love in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction. And then like the idea of multiple versions of the same person. And specifically, there's a line in Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick, which is the book that Blade Runner was based on. One character says to another something along the lines of, do you think you could fall in love again? And he replies, only if she looks like you. Like, that line itself is very fraught with meaning. And so the book takes those ideas and tries to synthesize something out of it. The title of it is called The Failure Experiment. There's an idea in queer theory that was put forth by Jay Halberstam in the title of their collection of essays called the queer art of failure.
Mm.
And the thrust of that book is that part of what underpins queerness, quote unquote queerness, is the idea of failing to conform. So the compilation of various types of failure, the compilation of various versions of the same person, trying something over and over and over to somehow reach perfection and always failing.
Mm-hmm.
That was the ideological center of it. For genre considerations, I decided to go with science fiction, not only because of the Philip K. Dick side of it, but because the entire subgenre of cyberpunk deals with ideas of personhood and failing to conform and bodily autonomy and all of those things. And
Well, and also like altering the body and hacking the body too, right?
yeah, and so it seemed like a really good way to investigate not just the queer experience, but the trans experience in a way that hadn't been done that I personally have seen.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure there are other people that have done this, but this is my version. From a technical standpoint, I decided to write it as what's called a serial poem, which was really invented and explored by the California poets Robert Duncan, Jack Spicer, and Robin Blazer. And Jack Spicer in particular, what it is basically it's effectively one large book-sized poem that is composed effectively sequentially.
Mm-hmm.
It starts at the beginning and it ends at the end, and it just goes. What was always interesting to me is that Jack Spicer was roommates with Philip K. Dick at one point in time for some period when they were both living in Berkeley. And that connection was something that was always interesting to me because while they both focus on similar themes sometimes, they don't really overlap that much. Like, Jack was much more interested in language and classics and stuff like that. And Jack was always looking kind of backwards to synthesize the future. Whereas Philip K. Dick was more, at least at this point in time, was focused on extrapolating the present into the future.
Mm-hmm.
So trying to find a middle ground between those two very different personalities,
Mm-hmm.
plus taking all those genre conventions of cyberpunk and trying to do something that wasn't replicating the golden age of cyberpunk, which I would consider being the early 80s through the late 90s.
Mm-hmm.
As far as references were concerned, I used 1997 as a cutoff point.
Yep.
Like, I didn't use any sources from after that, with the exception of one poem that uses a little bit of The Matrix,
Mm-hmm.
which I basically consider like The Matrix is like the crest of that particular wave. And pretty much everything that's come after that has been trying to replicate that in some way. And I didn't want to do that. Like, I didn't want to keep rehashing The Matrix. I wanted to go for stuff before that.
Yeah.
It's all one large, complicated, hard to describe project, but like reading it makes sense.
Yes, it does.
I think.
I mean, I have a
Yeah.
copy of the manuscript
Yeah.
for reasons I will get into.
Yeah.
And like it makes sense to me.
Yeah.
I guess I can get into my reasons.
Yeah, that would be great.
I'm gonna do one of those. I'm telling you that story to tell you this one thing.
Mhm.
So you mentioned that you started this project back when I was living in Twin Falls, and so the
Yeah.
seeds of my half of this also started when I was still in Idaho. We got a new school librarian.
Yeah.
Who went through the library collection and was like, "Oh my god, this needs to be culled." And she pruned a lot out of the library. Some of the stuff that she pruned out was like old racist stuff that just needed to go. Some of it was books that hadn't been checked out since the 70s or the 80s. She knew that I used books in my artwork. And so a lot of the time she would give me the opportunity to take these books home. There was one set in particular that I was really interested in, and it was the hilariously anachronistic collection of books on computers and technology. How to use the internet, how to get a job as an engineer, how does the internet work? And it was like all the really old stuff on how the internet works. Like, this is a listserv.
Yeah.
And like
80s style stuff.
Yeah, like but like cool, but like funny. Like funny in a way of like, we are the Oregon Trail generation and we kind of remember this, but like none of this is useful for anybody anymore. I was like, I'm gonna have fun with these. I'm gonna really have fun with these. So I had this box of books. And they came to North Dakota with me. I hadn't used them yet. And so when I was done with my Berenstein Bears collection, I was still feeling very nostalgic. And I was still feeling very much like using 80s and 90s color palettes.
Yeah.
And so I started a collection of paintings using like collaging pages of those books in there, and like with some very neon like there was a lot of teal and neon orange or teal and fluorescent pink. And I stalled out. The paintings didn't have any life in them. And usually when I'm painting, it's a conversation with the canvas, and they feel very alive, and I'm talking with them all the time. But these paintings, they weren't going anywhere. Like I had a good start on them, and then they just sort of, and like I had originally kind of envisioned them as being like a women in STEM, but like also the consequences of technology. Like the song Orange Crush by REM was one of the songs that was really sticking with me, because the music video is like really powerful, I think. It's a black and white music video of a young kid with, I think he's wearing dog tags, and he's like, but the song is really, it's about Agent Orange.
Yeah.
It's a Vietnam song. So like I wanted them to, I like doing art that looks poppy and fun, but really has like a darker underside to it when you look at it. And that's kind of what I was going for. But like I couldn't make it click. And so these paintings have been sitting in my studio for like 3 years. And I'm like, I'll get back to them. Like I didn't gesso over them. I didn't get rid of them. I was like, at some point these paintings will start talking. So then you finished the book while you were here.
Yeah.
And you were talking about releasing it. This was last summer, releasing it this year. And I was like, what if I finish the paintings? And what if we do like a cross promotion? And now the cross promotion has sort of escalated in scope. It's less of a, because for one, we had a bit of a miscommunication. Like, partly because this is what my brain does. It starts with a small seed. Like, what if we cross promote and just like release them at the same time and share both projects with our email lists and just sort of feed off each other that way? But my brain kept working on that and forgot what the original idea was, and turned into like, this is a joint project. And then I was like, oh, like, I'm like, how much marketing are you going to do? Like, and you're like, whoa, hold on. I thought we were just like releasing them at the same time and sharing them with our lists. I was like, oh. So anyway, we potentially have some other stuff planned, but it depends on money, because things are expensive. But the paintings are alive. They're very fluorescent right now, but they will be toned down because reference images for the cyberpunk are, I mean, they do have a lot of that fluorescent, but they're all like tempered, right? It's like pops of fluorescent, and like, because it's always raining. Why is it always dark and raining in cyberpunk movies? I don't know. Probably because they're all on the, like you said, well, they're all on the coast. There's not a lot of cyberpunk that happens in Fargo. Okay, now that I've said that, I'm like, what would a cyberpunk combine look like? Actually, we're kind of just living that future right now anyway.
Yeah, it's starting to get into that.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, it would look like a John Deere with an iPad in it. We already have that. Okay, that's not interesting to paint. That's just my life. But right now, the paintings are at the stage of being obscenely fluorescent.
If I can interject.
Yeah.
One of the things that helped, I think, kick this idea over in your head.
Did you hear Winky?
Yeah, I heard a Winky. One of the things that helped kick this over in your head was I got the cover art back from my artist, and we spent probably 2 weeks going back and forth on what color palette we were going to use for that cover. And once it hit, we were like, that's it. And I sent it to you, and you just like, you fell in love with it.
Mm-hmm.
Like having a visual reference on it for you, I think helped too. Instead of just like the idea, having a direction to move in helped.
Yes. And what really helped like enliven the paintings was when we were texting one night, and I was still feeling a little stuck because usually my paintings are based on things that I'm really into, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
Shakespeare, children's literature. I had a series of paintings that were about my caregiving experience with my mother and dementia, migraines, things that I'm like deeply connected to. Cyberpunk is cool, but it's not something that I'm deeply invested in.
Yeah.
And so I've kind of been getting a crash course on it.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, really, you've been dripping it out over the last 3 years, but it's just not something that I have done extensive research on the way you have. And what really made it click for me was just the other night when we were texting and you said, well, a huge part of cyberpunk is institutional bureaucracy and drugs. And immediate and like we had I was like, oh, well, I keep a bunch of like my drug packets, like not like my medication packets. And
Yeah.
I've been saving them for something because I like doing art related to my illness and my disability. I've only dabbled in it as far as the migraine art, but I keep all of my birth control packets and all my steroid packets. And I have pill bottles, and I have the inserts from my migraine medication, those big fold out ones that have all of like the information about the drug trials and all of that. And I have all that stuff. And I have all of the paperwork from applying for disability and all
Mm-hmm.
of the paperwork for Medicaid and all of this institutional dreck. And that is like impossible to navigate trying to prove that I'm disabled. And that combined with I went back through all of those computer books, some really terrifying looking in that context, terrifying looking old school pictures of like old MRI machines and like old school like laser type setups. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, like stuff is really starting to pop.
Yep.
And the paintings are alive. I have gone from I told you this too. Like my rising sign, if you're into astrology, my rising sign is Gemini, right? So that's kind of what like rules my everyday activities. My
Mm-hmm.
paintings have gone from the paintings are dead, they are nothing, to I have more ideas in my brain than I have hours and minutes of energy in the day to put them on the canvas. Like, and I can't sleep at night, partly because of the political situation right now is like absolutely terrifying. And that's a good thing to put into the paintings too, because holy shit. Like, am I even gonna be able to is Medicaid gonna exist in 3 months? I don't
Right.
know.
Yeah.
Like, I can't afford $2,000 worth of medication a month. I don't even make that much money. Like I make $600 a month
Yeah.
doing seed samples at the sunflower plant. Like I
Mm-hmm.
am I going to be able to pay my brain bill? No. This is bad. Like,
Yeah.
this is so there's that keeping me up at night. But then there's also like I want to be in the studio painting because I have
Yeah.
12 paintings sitting there, and I go through a phase where I work on all 12 at the same time so that the color palettes stay the same, and I'm like adding underlayers all at the same time, and then I have to pare down and focus on 1 to 2 at a time.
Yeah.
And then I finish them either individually or in pairs. And I'm almost to the point now where I need to be like super focused on 1 at a time. And that's what I want to be doing. I don't want to be sleeping. I don't want to be
Yeah.
resting. But I also know that like my body needs 12 hours of rest a day. That's so
Mm-hmm.
much. Like,
It
come
really is.
on.
It
Come
really
on. I
is.
want to be in this. I want to be painting. And so like I'm not sleeping. I'm laying there worried about everything and also wanting to put that energy into the canvas because that's how I process.
Mm-hmm.
And like I was right. Like these paintings would come alive when I needed them to. And like this
Mm-hmm.
is the
Mm-hmm.
perfect time for us to be doing a project on autonomy and personhood and institutional bureaucracy
And queerness.
and queerness and living under an oppressive government and
Yeah.
the mood of It's Always Raining. It's always dark and raining. Right? That's a mood. It's like, oh yeah, that's a mood. That's a choice. Got it. Okay. I get it now. I get cyberpunk now.
Yeah. So when are we planning on releasing these?
March 21st.
It is the third Friday, I believe.
Yes.
Third Friday in March. So
yeah, you'll be here.
Theoretically,
Probably. You'll be here.
Unless North Dakota turns into an anti-trans hellhole. In which case, yeah.
Which, I mean, that's likely.
Yeah. We'll see. Enderlin's nice.
Yeah, I was gonna say my hometown's nice. We have proximity to Fargo. Like right here could be okay. And that's honestly, speaking of that, that's really what's gonna happen across the country. It's gonna be very fractured, regionalized. It's gonna be pockets. Everything is gonna be pockets. It's gonna be like how there are sundown towns. But like the whole country is gonna be that way for everything.
Yep. Yeah. So March 21st, provided we're all still here, which we should be.
Yeah. So what is one true thing? We did an episode right before Christmas where you kind of hit on like our one true thing for the podcast, which was like awesome. But like, what is one true thing that you have learned from this project in particular?
This one is process related, I think, but it also applies to a lot of things in life, but specifically it's letting things come when they come. I consciously decided to work in the serial poem format because it's not exactly stream of consciousness, but the idea of working on the same piece throughout the entire thing as it comes, not worrying about whether or not things are a cohesive whole, because just being next to each other, they are. And trusting myself to know when something is done and when it's not. Because I reached up, like, for probably almost 2.5 years on that project. I thought I knew I had an end in mind, and then I reached that point and I was like, this isn't quite there. And it turned out what I thought was the end of, like, it's not a narrative poem exactly, but like the end of the third act was actually the end of the second act, and I had a whole third of the poem left to write. And that part took another 6 months or so. And then when I got to the end of that section, then I knew I was done. And I wouldn't have gotten the piece that I have now if I would have stopped at that point.
And there's so much good stuff in that third act.
Yeah, I not to toot my own horn or anything, but I thought I was pretty good. Yeah. It really makes me think about that idea of art is never finished, it's only abandoned. And I knew at that point that it wasn't worth abandoning. I knew there was more to it than that, and I just had to wait. So I think that's probably what I learned. And that there's like a secondary thing of it's okay to be weird, but that's like an entirely different conversation and involves a lot more talk about influences and stuff that we don't have time for here. So So I think it's just trusting yourself and trusting the idea. And I feel like that was kind of reflected in yours too. Like you didn't just like, oh, this is a terrible idea. It just sat in the closet for a few years and percolated.
I was actually gonna say, well, can I share mine?
Yeah.
You just did. Basically, yeah. Is that the art will be made. And like in the like I wasn't stressing about those paintings when they were sitting there.
Yeah.
I made two other collections that I am really, really proud of in the meantime. Like I wasn't not making art. I didn't let that stop me. I did my Ophelia collection and my Tempest collection in the meantime, and I'm really proud of those.
Yeah.
And I think now is a really good time for this art. Yeah, I think it's trusting myself, trusting the art, trusting the process, knowing when to step back. And the more we are doing it, the more we do the work, the more we can trust the work and trust ourselves to do the work. Because there were like I had spent like a couple days with those paintings where I was like trying to force them, and I was like, this isn't working. It was a relief to set them aside. Like I didn't even feel like I was doing like, as a recovering perfectionist, there is definitely the risk of feeling like I'm failing. Like, I mean, the failure experiment is a fabulous title for this entire project. But learning that I can walk away from something and that it'll, if it's meant to be, it'll be waiting for me when I come back, or that it will come back to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like one direction or the other, like it will work out.
Yeah.
The paintings weren't going anywhere. They were waiting. They just needed to ripen. Like pineapples. They take 2 years to grow.
I was not aware of that, actually.
Uh-huh.
And part of my Patreon, my personal Patreon, is that at a certain backer level, I will write poems for people based on whatever subject they want me to. Yeah.
Yeah, some of them you disown as soon as you send them.
Oh my God, yeah.
There's been at least 2 that you've written for me that we can't share.
Yeah. But there's one that I wrote. I can't even remember exactly what the prompt was. I remember who gave it to me, but I can't remember what the specific prompt was. But I ended up effectively, I think it might have been pineapple on pizza now that I think about it. But it ended up going into a long digression about Dole and the pineapple industry in Hawaii and how completely fucked up it is. In all of that work, that was probably like 2 days of work I did on that poem. I did not know how long pineapple took to ripen.
Like that's how long it takes to grow. That's how long it takes to grow.
Yeah, I had no idea. Huh.
Yeah. Now I need to double check. I'm almost positive. I don't like being wrong when people are like looking, like listening to us, right?
Mm-hmm.
How long does it take for pineapple to grow? 2 to 3 years. Sometimes longer. 8, and then another site says 18 months or longer, depending on the variety and the climate.
Huh.
Yeah, for one pineapple.
Well, now I know. And pineapple is just like poetry and just like painting. They all start with P.
Yep. And the enzymes make your tongue hurt.
The enzymes in paint.
Yeah. Don't eat the paint. Oh, okay. So I told my mom about that mug. Don't talk to me until I've had my paint water.
Yeah.
So, because she was just painting those chairs. And I was like, Ma, don't drink the paint. Like, what? So then I had to tell her the whole thing about how artists are always like accidentally drinking their paint water or putting their paintbrushes in their coffee cup. She thought that was pretty funny. She was not in danger of doing that. She did spill half a quart of yellow paint on the hardwood floor, though.
Oh no.
That was a fun night to clean up. So anyway, we're gonna end on that note. Don't spill paint on your hardwood floors. But she finished her project. The table and chairs are done. She finished them 2 nights ago.
Oh wow. Been working on that a while.
Yeah, since this summer.
Just gotta give it time.
Yep, just gotta give it time. Watch lots of Perry Mason when you're in the living room. Well, this was fun. March 21st.
March 21st.
Pineapple paintings and poetry. And people with
pronouns.
Palladium prosthetics. I was trying to think of more P words. Yeah, I got nothing. Thank you. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Hoorf. To get the complete show notes and all the links mentioned on today's episode, or to get a full transcript of the episode, visit hoorfpodcast.com. Join the blessed herd of St. Winkus. By signing up for our newsletter, you can get Hoorf episodes delivered directly to your inbox. What's more, you get invitations to our monthly Coffee and Biscuits Chat, where you get to hang out with Ricki and Elle,
talk about the show, and connect on the topics that mean the most to you. You can sign up for that at hoorfpodcast.com. If you become a patron for only $3 a month, you can support the creation of this podcast, help pay my editor, and join a community of caregivers out here just doing our best. Thank you again for joining me, Elle Billing, the chronically ill queer femme who is very tired, on this episode of Hoorf. Until next time, be excellent to each other. Hoorf is hosted by Elle Billing at Ellen Wink. Audio editing by Ricki Cummings at Ricki Poo. Music composed by Ricki Cummings. Hoorf is a production of Ellen Wink Art Studio LLC, all rights reserved. Hoorf can be found on all social media platforms at Hoorf Podcast, at HOORF Podcast.
Are those for eating, though?